When I first tried digital painting, I could have saved myself so much time and frustration had I just known about these two things. But instead, I would spend ages rendering a single piece, only to never be happy with it in the end. That was until I came up with a super simple cheat code to start speeding up my process. Rendering became fun and my favourite thing to work on, even as a complete beginner. And now, I can paint like this in just 38 minutes. And by using the tools in this video, now you can as well. But if you don't also learn the one trick that professional and industry-level artists are using to make great art fast, you'll probably stay like I was, stuck spending way too long on artwork I wasn't even proud of. Luckily, the first part of my shortcut is actually really easy. To get started, you just need to head down to the description, and then click the link to download my free brush set. Because once you combine these brushes with the technique I'll be sharing later in this video, they'll make rendering quick and easy for you. But you will still need that second secret I uncovered. You see, the reason I was failing so hard before wasn't necessarily a lack of fundamentals, but an issue with my entire process. And I'm willing to bet that 90% of the time, that's all that's really holding you back too. And while I was doing all this trying to figure out this whole digital painting thing, I felt like I was falling behind. I was constantly watching other artists' videos on how to speed up. But it wasn't until I recently watched this video by Mark Burnett that it finally clicked. If you want to get faster at finishing art, you just need to have a clear and efficient workflow. It's what more experienced artists were focused on that I was completely missing. An easy, minimal process. In his video, he explains it like following a recipe, and that got me thinking about these videos. I realised that it's also why it's best to study someone's methods, or process, rather than just trying to copy the result, aka their art. Just like with his example with baking/cooking or any other skill really, it's usually easier to follow along with someone who's already confident. And once you've learned their methods, you can then apply them in your own way, which is what I hope you'll be able to do by watching me. Okay, so now you know why having a strategy is so important, but how exactly can these brushes help you with that? Well, I specifically designed them to streamline my process, and I gave them features that automatically solve my biggest problems for me. Let's start with something you're probably familiar with. I used to default to shading with purple on a multiply layer, which isn't bad, but definitely lacking for a more realistic look. My shadows lacked any depth, so to try and make them all varied, I just clip on different colours or paint over them. What I was trying to imitate here was the natural shift in hue, saturation and brightness that you'd see in real life, but I was definitely struggling to do that. And that's the first problem that these brushes will solve for you. Usually, you'd have to go into the colour wheel to choose these colours yourself before blocking them in over your base layer, much like you would with physical painting. But doing this tends to take a lot of time, plus you'll need more knowledge on colour theory and light to make it look appealing. So instead of doing this, I use my brushes to combine the efficiency of cell shading and the best aspects of traditional painting. By just using the eyedropper tool and grabbing your flat colour, you can then choose between the dark or light paintbrush, and it'll change it into the ideal shading colour for you. And then you'll naturally get different tones as the colour shifts with each brush stroke. Along with the lightly textured, painterly look, you can go back over areas for more intensity, similar to using watercolours. You might notice at first that the dark paintbrush comes out duller than you expected. That's just because I prefer to use the colour burn blending mode for my shadows. Later on, I'll show you all the different blending modes I use, but if you use the companion file to practice along with me, then these will already be set up for you. Since these brushes use colour dynamics to automatically adjust the hue, saturation and value of your strokes based on the angle, direction and tilt of your Apple Pencil, I do recommend you use one to get the best results. Unfortunately, you're not going to get the same effect with a third-party stylus. But back to the brushes themselves. If you need even more variety, then with the full set, you'll get an additional mid-tone and ultra-bright paintbrush as well. Of course, with either version, you'll also get my blending brushes, which I made because I didn't want to fight the Procreate smudge tool any harder than I already have to. Another thing that would normally take extra time to include is any hard edges, bounce lights, rim lights, the terminator line, and subsurface scattering. Did I just say surface? So, of course, I made a brush to add in these more advanced effects quickly. Now, this one's a little hard to explain, so it's probably best if you try it for yourself. Or you can just watch the full walkthrough and I'll show you what it does and the bonus brushes you can get. I'm going to show you what I mean here. I've got my original sketch and I've got this on color burn right now. And I'm using my dark paintbrush and all I've done is just color picked this. Then we're going to go over something like this. You can layer it
let's see. This is what it will look like with that blending mode. Obviously I'm being a little rough since I've already completed this. Just want to show you guys. Something like that. And if you don't have it on color burn, it's going to look pretty dull. It's going to look like this. Which is why I prefer to, if I can, not really use the multiply blend mode with these brushes. But you can either use, usually color burn works really well. Linear burn, you get a little bit darker, but not quite as desaturated as multiply. I will also sometimes just quickly duplicate this layer. You can see with the color burn, it does color shift a lot better. So you don't have to use that blending mode if you don't like it, but that's just what I recommend because that's what I use. And then I'm just going to go back over that with an overlay blend mode. If you think it is still looking a bit dull, so I don't mind it too much, but I'm just gonna change that transparency a little bit. And I'm going to go in with my light brush. And if you want to, you can also color pick not just like your base layer, but over where you've put some of the shadows too. Get a slightly different color. And so I will just show you now. This is kind of what it looks like just on its own. No, that looks silly. So I am going to go with color dodge. So color burn and color dodge is my go-to. Actually, I'm picky. I'm gonna redo that bit. So this will be our highlights. And just roughly blocking them out here. Just zoom out so you guys can see. And we end up with something like this. I'm gonna take my blending brush, which is the Ultra Soft Blend. Just gonna go over that a little bit. Actually, I'm happy with that. I'm going to use the Shadow and Light brush. Zoom in a bit here. This is the one that is actually a little bit tricky. I find you usually want to go a little bit smaller than you'd like. And you do kind of have to try and remember what way it's meant to go. So if you go in this direction, just like that, you can see the edge here, the part that gets more opaque, is actually facing a different way compared to if you did it like that. But it does really show up best if you go light. You're using it in something curved. It's usually the best use case for it. It's not much I could do to change it, but you do just have to try and remember to make sure you're drawing your strokes the right way if you want to maximize the effect. So yeah, this way is the way I want the light to hit. Versus if I was doing shadows, I'd want to go down like that. And this is why I say to go a bit lighter in pressure than you normally would, because if you just go straight like this, you lose most of your definition. But if you do a nice light line like that, you can actually see how it's made to get darker in certain areas. See? So the actual brush shape is designed to be like, there's one really bright bit here, slightly less bright, and then it fades out. Kind of like the transitional lighting. It's quite useful. Flip through to these. And what did I just say about making sure I was doing this the right way? Yes, if you hold your pressure the right way, sometimes you might want to tilt. Sometimes I find it pays to tilt down a bit as well, because it is meant to be able to react, but you just need to find something that works for you. Got some nice highlights now. I'm now going to do this, but with shadows. What colour does that show up as? I think actually if I have it bright for now, it'll be a bit easier for me to tell. As I go along, how it's turning out. Like that, I think. Might as well do the shadow here as well. I think for the shadows in particular, I will be blending this a bit Don't want to do it too much, because it kind of ruins the effect. Linear burn for this one, I think. And yeah, I did kind of go a bit hard. That. So here is where you would stop if you were using the light version. But since I've got the premium version here to show you out, I'm going to just quickly demonstrate what I would do in that case. So I'm going to, once again, just color pick. And obviously the process, you would do this during your other process. So obviously you would be switching to these brushes as you were using the other ones, but I'm just going to go over the top because it's a lot easier. And then you can actually see the clear difference. So this is the mid brush. I find usually turns things nice and blue. And that is nice for just in between in the shadows. We want a bit of a shift, but where there isn't a ton of light hitting, you know, just to transition the colors together. Between those, blur again. You could just go back and layer if you find that after blurring it, you're actually not quite so stoked. With the soft look, I also find that this works really well, just if you want some color variation, which is why I wanted to demonstrate it with you, because it's a good example for it. You just go, put some extra strokes in. Let's go with that. Probably linear or color burn again. It's looking a bit intense though. So now I might actually go for the multiply, and then see if I can layer that over. I think actually vivid light would be interesting, but I'm going to blow that layer a bit. Actually, a bit much. We'll go for linear burn. Just cut back on that a bit. And then blend a wee bit. And again, since this has been saved on layers, you don't have to duplicate and mix and match like this, but I'm just a bit of a perfectionist. So you're just going to go with your extra bright brush now. And probably color pick light color for that, why not? And is it just more purple? I'm just going to put this in wherever I think the light should be hitting the strands pretty strongly. But you'll notice I'm trying not to do it right at the edges, because I prefer the way it looks. And sometimes light doesn't actually work like that in real life. You don't always have a clean edge. You have light and then surrounded by a bit of dark. In some cases. Probably not the most realistic, but it is quite pretty, so yeah. So these are designed to be still feeling digital, but quite textured and painterly. So if you're more of a clean, minimalistic kind of person, these might not be quite right for you, but they may still be useful. I think for this, I probably will go for add. Maybe soft light, actually. Soft light. And then add again, but I'm actually just gonna get my soft brush and tone it down a little, since additive is pretty intense. And I'm gonna smudge, and I'm gonna bring that opacity right down. And so yeah, as I'm recording this, it's been about 13 minutes, so we've gone from just this all the way to something like this, and yeah, 13 minutes. And obviously, you can go back in and start rendering the face now.